Hello, everybody. Welcome. And I've got Leon here, the scriptural enthusiast, to expound on the Rapture. We're going to do a three-part series. It will be titled "A Taste of Judaism." Right? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yes. And included in that, I will back up and do a personal testimony. We're going to make a playlist, but this is number one. And so the reason we're doing this, I wanted to do this and ask Leon to do this is, hey, the end times are here. You can tell, if you're aware, you'll know. Just pay attention, that kind of stuff, right? So, and so I run these things by Leon. What do you think of that? And so, again, a lot of people have a perspective that's not exactly. I mean, they're reading Revelation, they're in the book, they're in the Word, right? They're in it, but is it connected to the history? Is it in context, or is it just you cracking open the Bible and you just read it, and now all of a sudden the world's coming to an end? So that's kind of my thought is because I think it can create actual anxiety for people, or they think they're on it, they're on it, and you got to get with the program because this is it, or and maybe we don't exactly know, but we're going to talk about that. So I just got Leon here, and he's going to talk about the rapture, and like I said, there'll be more to come, but this is the part one. So I'll just turn over to Leon, and let's roll. Here you go, Leon.
Well, hello. My actual name is Leon, but for the purposes of this program, I'm going to be going by my middle name, Will. So, this is going to be a project that I'm doing, and it's called A Taste of Judaism. So, basically, we'll be talking about different topics and ideas and looking at them from their historical context within the framework of Judaism. So I would say the main mission of A Taste of Judaism is the first part is to make Jesus Jewish again, because Jesus is really kind of been taken out of his actual historical context. And the first part of making him Jewish again is actually like using his name. And his name is actually Yeshua. In Hebrew, Yeshua means salvation. Jesus is kind of like just what English speakers, what most of us call him, but his actual name is Yeshua, or more accurately, Yeshua ben Yosef. Yeshua ben means son, and Yosef is Joseph, as we call him. And a part of the thing about making Jesus Jewish again is that for the last 2,000 years or so, that Yeshua's identity, his Jewishness, has been taken away from him and has been replaced with something that is very foreign. His identity has been very has been somewhat marred, and it has been a foreign identity has been taken upon him. People that are familiar with the story of Joseph, this may help you can maybe understand what I'm talking about, where in that story that Joseph, his Jewish brethren, that they saw him and they didn't recognize him. And why didn't they recognize him is because he looked like an Egyptian. So they couldn't recognize him even though that's their brother. And so that's the same thing that's happened to Yeshua for the last 2,000 years, is that his true identity as a Jewish man living a Jewish life that's been taken away, and he has been clothed in foreign garments. And A Taste of Judaism is in one guy's effort to bring the Jewishness back. Second, mission, I guess, of A Taste of Judaism, and it's the same as the first, which is making the New Testament Jewish again. Also, myself, coming from growing up in a Christian background, I always thought the New Testament was Christian, to be honest. And over the years, I found out that the New Testament is basically first century Judaism, and all the things that someone understands apart from a Jewish context, that it's not authentic, it's not accurate. And even Paul mentions this, if someone is familiar with what Paul wrote in Romans, where he talks about what is the benefit of a Jew. And he says, much in many ways. And one of the things that is a benefit is that the Jews have been given the oracles of God. The Jews have been given the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament, and it's their job to share with the rest of the world how to authentically and accurately and properly serve God. And the New Testament is just it is a first century Judaism, different ideas and topics that were in the world at that time, in amongst the Jews in the house of Israel. That's what the New Testament basically about. And so A Taste of Judaism is about that, is to putting things back in its authenticity and understanding it accurately. So with the intro being done, what are we going to talk about today? And that is going to be the rapture. So as Jeff mentioned, that all of us for the last 2 years, we have experienced a lot of calamities, from COVID to political strife to social upheavals to losing of jobs and all sorts of calamities. We as humans, we've gone through a lot of hardships for the last 2 years. And from a Christian perspective, especially from a pre-tribulation perspective, that, you know what, before all the proverbial, what hits the fan, we're supposed to be raptured out of here. What's going on? Why are we gone? So that's kind of a perspective that we're going to talk about and hopefully learn about. And so with everything, that the rapture is a Jewish concept. It is developed in Judaism, and most Christians, at least, they're familiar with First Thessalonians 4, I believe, and where Paul talks about being raptured up and at the sound of the trumpet. And these ideas are developed within the framework of Judaism. And so we're going to go in and look at rapture, because raptures happen many, many times in scriptures already. However, most people are just familiar with 1 Thessalonians 4. So in a nutshell, rapture is just basically, it is Jews and Gentiles going from some geographical location on earth and making a journey from wherever it is, and the end destination is Canaan or the Promised Land or Israel or Jerusalem. And that's basically what rapture in its Jewish understanding is, basically just going from some place here on earth, and the end destination is Israel, the land of Canaan, or the Promised Land. So we're going to go and look at several places in Scripture that probably you didn't know was talking about rapture, but in the traditions and teachings of Judaism, it is rapture, actually. So the first one we're going to look at is Abraham. Now, most of us know that Abraham had a call from God to leave his where he was living in Ur and to go to the land of Canaan. And when Abraham left Ur, he went to a place called Haran. And while he was at Haran, he gathered among himself people that listened to his message. And his message was this, that there's no such thing as an idol. There's not many gods. There's only one God, and that we should worship this one God. And so Abraham and his wife Sarah and nephew Lot and his other family members joined with the people that were of Haran, Gentiles, and both groups, Jew and Gentile, went to the land of Canaan. And so this is outlined in Genesis 12. And so this isn't the first rapture, but this is in Judaism. Abraham and everyone with him was raptured from Haran, and they took a journey to the land of Canaan. The next one is Abraham's son, Isaac. And if you're familiar with that story, that when Abraham was near the ending of his life, he wanted to marry his son. And so he sent his servant to go from Canaan to Padam Aram to get a wife for his son. The servant went to Padam Aram and got Rachel to be his wife. And so the servant and Rachel went from Padam Aram again back to Canaan. That is rapture. That's just what it is. Just moving from one location, and the end destination is the land of Canaan. The next one is Abraham's grandson, Jacob. And we're probably familiar with the story of how Jacob and Esau were fighting over the birthright. And eventually, Jacob's mother, Rachel, told him to go to Padam Aram to have his brother Esau's anger to subside, because he was upset that the birthright was taken and Esau wanted to kill him. So Jacob went from the land of Canaan and he went to Padam Aram. And while he was there, that's where he married Rachel and Leah. That's where he had 12 sons in Padam Aram. And when he had the son Joseph, that's when God told him to return back to the land of Canaan. And once again, just like his father Isaac and grandfather Abraham, when Jacob was in Padam Aram, he was telling the Gentiles there that there's only one God and to worship the true and living God. And again, we had Jacob and his 12 sons along with the Gentiles that embrace the message of there being one God and serving this one God. And again, Jacob went from Padam Aram to Canaan, rapture again. So we see this pattern going from what rapture basically is going from some location, whether it's Ur or from Padam Aram, and the end destination is Canaan. So moving forward, we have the Exodus. Now, most people are familiar with the Exodus, but there's a lot of details that are, unless you're studying the Exodus under the direction of Jews, there's like a lot of things that you will just miss out by just reading it in a regular Bible. So one of the things is that, as we know, that the Israelites, they were in Egypt, and at a point God wanted to bring them out. So God brings the 10 plagues, as we know. And during those 10 plagues, at one point, the plagues were striking the Egyptians, but they were not striking the Israelites. And the Egyptians and the other people that lived in Egypt, they were curious. Why is this happening to? Why are these calamities, these plagues happening to you, the Jews, Israel, but it's not happening to you, but it's happening to everyone else? And so the Jews were telling them that God made a covenant with our forefathers, and He is going to bring us up out of the land of Canaan, bring us up from Egypt to go to Canaan. And so there were a lot of Egyptians and other people of the land that were living in Egypt that they respected Moses, and they also were going to go out of the land when Israel did. And on specifically on the 10th plague, if you're reading the story, that before the 10th plague, God told Moses that the Israelites, they can't leave Egypt without great treasure. And under no circumstances whatsoever should the Israelites leave Egypt without treasure. And the sages of Israel talk about what is the treasure. Well, the treasure is the Gentiles. So after the 10th plague, that again, the pattern, you have Israel and the Jew and the Gentiles together leaving Egypt and going to the land of Canaan. And so this is in Exodus, again, the pattern of Jew and Gentile leaving Egypt, and the end destination is the land of Canaan. So in Exodus, this is rapture that's already happened. The next one we will look at is the book of Ruth. Now, most people, I don't know how familiar people are with that book, but we'll see the same pattern. So in the book of Ruth, it starts out with Naomi, she's a Jewish woman, and her two daughter-in-laws. One is Orpah, and the other is Ruth. Now, all three of them, their husbands die. Their husbands were all Jewish, and they were living in the land of Moab. And so when all three of their husbands died, Naomi told her daughter-in-laws that I have nothing for you, and I'm going to go back to the land of Israel, to my people, and that you should go to your people or stay with your people in the land of Canaan. So Orpah kissed Naomi, and she went to the land of Canaan, to the land of Moab. But Ruth said the very iconic line that your people will be my people and your God will be my God. And she connected with Naomi, and both of them went from Moab to Israel. Again, Jew and Gentile going from Moab to the land of Israel. So the story, if one is familiar with the story, that Ruth eventually marries Boaz, and Ruth and Boaz are the great grandparents of King David. So again, we have the pattern of Jew and Gentile joined together and going to the land. So this pattern is the thing that Paul talks about in the New Testament about, we're maybe familiar with the one new man. The one new man, again, is that pattern that we've seen over and over and over of Jew and Gentile going to joining together and going to the land of Israel and worshiping God together, Jew and Gentile together in brotherly love. But I forgot one other rapture, and this is kind of this one is kind of a bonus feature, and this is Noah. In Judaism, that it is taught that Noah was raptured, and his rapture was, as we know, that God was going to bring judgment on the world, and God gave Noah instructions to build the ark. And when Noah built the ark actually was for people, but no one came. Just Noah's family are the only ones that came, and then the animals came. But initially, the ark was for all the people of the generation that would hear that God was going to bring judgment, but God was going to bring salvation in the midst of the judgment. And so in Judaism, that Noah was raptured from the generation of the flood and raptured to the new world that has been purified by the flood. So here again, we've seen again this concept of rapture, and the concept of rapture is a Jewish concept. It is found throughout. We've looked at a couple of high level examples in the Old Testament. And if you want to really get into it, the sages of Israel talk a lot about rapture and the elements of that. So, in the New Testament, I want to talk about some other examples, and there is the example of Revelation 7. Now, I don't know how familiar people are with that, but in Revelation 7 is when God gives John a vision of a time in the future where John saw all these different people of different nations and tongues, that they are all waving a palm branch. And in Judaism, that waving of the palm branch is the inauguration of the king. And the inauguration of the king is what the rapture is. And so Revelation 7 is talking about the rapture. And what John is seeing is all these Gentiles from the all over the world that have been brought to Israel, and they are waving the palm branch because they are waiting for the king, waiting for Yeshua to return. So in the New Testament, that's not kind of, but that's what the rapture is what's coming up in the future is that when Yeshua comes back again, that everyone that is in all the various geographical locations in the world, let's say Canada, North America, Central America, South America, Europe, India, China, all these different geographical areas, that when Yeshua comes again, all those believers are going to be ripped up from the different geographical places on the earth. They're going to be brought up into the sky, and they're going to be deposited in Jerusalem. And that is what John is seeing in Revelation 7. He's seeing the element of the rapture. And so this may be familiar because the same thing happened in the Gospels when Yeshua, when Yeshua was coming to Jerusalem on the Passover week, that at that point, all the Jews were, what were they waving? They were waving palm branches again, because palm branches is the sign of the inauguration of the king. And so that's when, in the Gospels, when Yeshua was coming to Jerusalem, and all the Jews were waving palm branches because Yeshua, King of the Jews, Yeshua is coming to sit on the throne of David, his father, in Jerusalem. And so again, we see the parallels here of Revelation 7, Gentiles, and in the Gospels, Jews, both of them waving the palm branches, because the palm branches, that's the sign of the inauguration. Like in the United States, we have the inauguration of the president. That is on January 20th, correct? Kind of. But you get the idea.
21st.
Yeah, so, but we get the idea that there is an inauguration of the president of the United States, and the same thing, the inauguration of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Yeshua. That's going to happen again. So that kind of in a nutshell is what rapture is. Basically, it is, again, Jew and Gentile joining together. as one man and going from wherever they are on the earth to the land of Canaan. And we've seen this with Abraham, saw it with Isaac, saw it with Jacob, saw it with the Exodus, where the Jews and Gentiles leaving Egypt on the journey to go to the promised land. And so this is this is in a nutshell kind of what rapture is. And so rapture is what most people are kind of familiar with as Jesus is coming and then we're being raptured to heaven. That's kind of what I would say what I was familiar with, and what most people, if you're like in the church, that's kind of what you're familiar with. But in actuality, again, like I mentioned, it's actually being taken up from some location on the earth and delivered to Jerusalem. That's the other thing too I want to mention is that in the book of Acts, when Jesus, Yeshua, ascended again, where was he? He was in Jerusalem, and the angels told his disciples that while you're looking up into heaven, he's going to return in the same way that he left. Where did he leave? He left in the Mount of Olives, which is in Jerusalem. So again, when we look at scripture from its authentic Jewish perspective, that we see this amazing symmetry, that everything that's already happened in the Old Testament is just going to happen again. And that is one of the axioms, one of the prophetic rules of in Judaism, is that if you want to know what the future redemption or what the future return of Messiah is, we already know, because each year you study that when you study Genesis through Deuteronomy. All the details of that is contained within the first 5 books. The first 5 books is the foundation of everything. So I think that will be about it for the topic of rapture. Hopefully that this was informative and thought-provoking, and hopefully you will have been exposed to something that is different, because these ideas are found in Judaism and in the Old Testament, as what we say. So again, my name is Will, and that will end the Taste of Judaism for today. So I will turn this back to Jeff.
Thank you, Leon. Excellent. Yes, keep an eye out for the next episode. Until next time.